All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening today. I'm really excited to have John Seelbinder on the phone. He's in Raleigh, North Carolina. He owns Local Icon Hospitality. And, man, John and his team have just seen some great success and a lot of growth really over 5 years. He opened his first place 5 years ago, 2012, and now has 6 concepts across 3 buildings in Raleigh. And all their places are very popular. If you check out their website, you can see all the great reviews, and just there's a lot of buzz for what John and his team are doing. So, and he's a busy dude. So thank you, John. I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Hey, Will, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for calling. I'm glad that we finally got a chance to link up. We're a big fan of you guys, so looking forward to talking a bit.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, so tell me, I always like to just get people to tell me just, give me your backstory, how you got started in the restaurant business in the first place.
Well, I always try to, I feed people a pretty bad joke, but they don't always pick up on it. I've got an engineering degree from NC State, so I always tell them that they teach hospitality management in the engineering school at State, and then people just kind of look at me a little sideways, which is a little awkward sometimes. But really what happened was, back in 1999, I was in Colorado, and I kind of started dipping my feet into the restaurant world, and then later on into the bar scene. So I was working in Denver. I was working in Boulder, working about 7 days a week. I would work in restaurants for 4, and then I'd go ski instruct for 3. So it was pretty exciting, except I had moved back to Raleigh to finish school, and I continued in the hospitality business, to pay my way through school. Did a lot of bartending, was in fine dining, corporate places, got a little taste of everything. Did a lot of nightclub stuff, did some DJ management, all that kind of thing. And then, I always had the business bug. And, I felt like when I graduated college, I would get my quote unquote real job. And found myself back in love with the hospitality business, always circling back around to it. My whole family's involved. And so eventually, maybe a little later than I'd hoped, I had the opportunity to open my first location by myself, which was, we signed the lease in August 2011 and opened the Architect January 6, 2012, and just never really looked back. It's been quite a hustle getting things going and keeping the momentum going, and we've diversified, in a pretty serious way. We've got multiple small restaurants, and we've got a craft cocktail bar, the Green Light, that just popped up on Thrillist's top 21 hidden bars in the U.S., or in the world, actually. It was first in the U.S., and now we've just opened Little City Brewing. So as this thing has continued to kind of blossom and push forward, I just kind of look back at everything that I did in my 20s and how I landed here. And sometimes it's just kind of a whirlwind. And then, as the dust starts to settle, you look and you say, hey, this is what I love. And it's always been a passion for me. So, we're back to keeping these things pushing forward.
I mean, you must. What's a typical day look like for you, man? That's a lot to do in a short amount of time. Are you burning the candle at both ends? I know you must have a great team behind you as well.
Well, I tell you, it's the entrepreneurial struggle. I'm a pretty transparent guy, and I maybe overly at times. I don't keep much behind the curtain. So what I'm starting to see is, last year and a half, we pretty much developed 4 concepts, along with the hospitality group that has a catering arm associated with it as well. So that was that was really candles at both ends. I was out most nights until 3 or 4 in the morning. I'd send in emails late at night and pick them up when I'd wake up, 5 or 6 hours later, and kind of hit the ground running. And that was just, always during the construction and development phase, it's always something. So that's when it gets a little hairy. You're always designing a new logo, new menus, picking out light fixtures, deciding color schemes and all that stuff, and dealing with contractors and permits and all that stuff. So that part is just really crazy. Still stay pretty busy now that everything's open, but I feel a lot more comfortable as we're in our zone of running our businesses. That doesn't mean that things are easy or that the hours change. It just feels like a different pace in a lot of ways.
How
a great
Go ahead.
No, we do have a great team, and it's all about the team. I mean, I've recruited guys from Chicago, New York. Got a guy that just came in from Nashville. My brewer was in Germany when I met him originally. And Raleigh is growing so fast that the old team that I used to run around with, everybody's kind of continued to go on and open their own new things. So we've had to kind of reach for talent at times.
Well, talk about take me back to starting when you first decided to open a place. I mean, did you envision doing this many concepts in a short amount of time, or was it? What were your thoughts when you first got started? And do you have business partners and or investors? Take me back to what got you going.
So I think that when I jumped into things, there was aspirations to grow. I'm a point and shoot kind of guy, and I've always been driven to want to see what's out there. I mean, one life to live kind of mentality that we've only got so much time to go after it. Sometimes I listen to a lot of podcasts and, some things that I reflect back to are, we're just kind of spinning around here in the universe and we're just one little speck of dust on a planet in a huge microcosm. So it's when I jumped into it, and once we had some success with the architect, I knew that it was, it was kind of our destiny to continue to grow. What I thought that I would do at the time was kind of stick with the model that we had, very bar heavy, nightlife heavy, which I love. I love the energy of that. And as things kind of just started to shake out, and Raleigh is growing so fast right now, and there's so much going on. It's kind of, you look for an opportunity for a building, and then for me at least, it's kind of hard to get your finger on the real estate because it's going so fast. There's so many players in the area now that if you scout out a lease or an opportunity in a building, sometimes you can develop the concepts around that property, so to speak. And looking for the exact right property to do something is sometimes kind of hard. So I did always have aspirations and a vision that we would grow. I didn't know that I would have 6 concepts under the belt this quickly. We do really only have 3 buildings, but still managing 6 brands and doing that it's proven to be a little bit of a challenge as we've kind of come up for air. But, it's exciting in the way that, it kind of keeps us moving. And like I said before, we're diversified in a lot of ways. We're selling beer from our brewery into all of our restaurants and bars. And then we're also, selling catering into all of our bars and the brewery that we're using for event space. So everything's kind of working together right now. And, I don't have any partners, so to speak, active partners. It's me. I've got a group of investors for each LLC and each location that we do, a small group of people that I like to do business with. I found that that's been kind of a win-win. I put together a kind of pool of not so much friends, but people I know that have got some cash on hand that they'd like to invest in something that has promising opportunity. And so it's good to work with people and have investors of folks that you've got a good relationship with. I can tell you that's helped with a lot of the headaches, not having to deal with people that I might not necessarily want to do business with.
Yeah, exactly, man. Exactly. Talk a little bit more about that, because I think that's an important thing. That there's people that have money to invest, but then there's the right type of investor. What are you looking for? Give me a little bit more on that.
Well, I think again, being transparent, I think that there's a lot of snakes in the world. Sometimes there's a lot of people out there with a lot of self-interest, and especially in our business where I feel like there's a lot of ways to cover that up. I look typically for, I look for someone that's got some income on hand or some money set aside and say that's not totally everything, their life savings or, every dime that they've managed to muster up, or they're going to leverage their house, or they're going to be so leveraged by that investment that it's going to be uncomfortable for them. I'm pretty, when I take that approach, I tell them, I say, hey, any investment is a risk, and we've got a great opportunity to make it a calculated risk, but, I don't want this to be something that's going to break you. And so if, that's kind of part of it. Somebody that's, got a pretty solid job and has got some income coming in, and they've had an opportunity to put some money aside, and they're looking to, invest because I feel like it's a comfortable relationship for both sides if that's the case, as opposed to I've seen some guys, and I've been involved with some guys before that have just taken money to keep the thing going forward. Give me money, give me money, give me money, and then there's some folks that have put themselves in a bind just by jumping into bed with folks like that because they have taken everything they've had and thrown it into there. So we try to break up the investment structure, for what's palatable to that person, and I try to sit down and have a face-to-face conversation with them, and I say, if anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000 is comfortable, do what's comfortable, and here's the numbers, and let's go from there. So we end up putting 4 or 5, sometimes 6 people together in the investment group, and hopefully that's a comfortable move for them because it takes a little time sometimes to get things off the ground.
Do you normally do debt or equity or both, or how do you structure that typically, generally speaking?
I've done both.
Okay.
I've done like a hybrid scenario, and it kind of depends on the investor. There's a lot of different ways to skin the cat. There's the SBA loan route, and then there's some an equity partner that can come in for the down payment on that. There's we did a hybrid scenario with the first one where we had some high interest debt, and then we had the equity guys also did some high interest debt, so they had a little bit of both, and we had that thing paid off really quickly. That was paid off in 10 months, and that was it was a great model. Just a busy bar getting off the ground really quickly with a low upfit, and that's kind of exciting to go that route.
Okay, good deal. Do you own how many? 3 buildings. Do you own the buildings? Did y'all buy the buildings, or?
We don't. We aspirations now. I would prefer not to sign a lease if at all possible going forward. We had an opportunity on one of those 3 buildings that didn't quite shake out exactly how we needed it to, and it ended up getting sold to another group of investors before we had a chance to move on it. But the aspiration is to be your own guy. We kind of grind forward and open a business, and there were entrepreneurs, and we put a lot of risk into those properties. A lot of times you're signing a triple net lease. It's in an older building. You're responsible for a lot of the upkeep and HVAC and plumbing and electrical and all that stuff. So in theory, we own the building for the 10 years that we're in that lease. There are some other lease opportunities where written into the lease, the landlord upkeeps a lot of that. But I think the goal, and I think depending on what the business model looks like, 200 restaurants nationwide might be tough to own every space, but for us, as we continue to kind of be in a market where we're going to call home and we're going to be rooted and grounded, I think it makes a lot of sense for us to continue to look towards the real estate opportunities moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. Any other thoughts about leases, like things you've learned that you would do differently the next time, or any advice you would give to folks that came to you and said, "Hey, man, we're looking at our first place and we're working on a lease negotiation"? What are some of the key points you would drive home to somebody that you think people might overlook that burn them down the road?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, right? Because sometimes getting caught in the excitement of an opportunity, either be it your first or your second, it's really easy to get excited about that and read it with the attorney, and the attorney maybe throws back some suggestions, and you don't want to lose the deal. For me, I know that all through my 20s, I'd move on a property, and then somebody with a little bit more money or experience comes along and sucks it up, and it's kind of like, oh man, that wasn't meant to be, I'll move on to the next one, kind of thing. And that take a lot of wind out of my sails. So then when I had the opportunity to jump on the first one, I didn't want to miss the opportunity. And I think I probably would have put myself into a situation that, looking back on it, it's important to read through that lease and look through that deal as much as you would through a business plan. I would be my recommendation, because things can go okay for 2 or 3 or 4 years, and then if there is a snag, there's not a protection in the lease for the tenant. It can get pretty hairy sometimes. And we've seen plenty of folks shut down solely based on their lease and how it was written and the time that was taken to kind of go through it. And I think it's really important just to take a minute, have a good attorney, talk through things. If you do have a business partner or a trusted liaison, to really kind of talk through those things, because some leases can be very simple, 7 or 8 pages long, and can leave a lot of things vague. So if there is a disagreement, there isn't anything set aside to kind of rectify that disagreement. And then some are really, really, really long, and 30, 31, 32 pages of, if you've got a big corporate real estate guy, typically their leases are a little more involved. And, going through that and making sure that all your bases are covered are really important. I've certainly seen, a couple of things where, just in my experience that, we signed our first lease, and, in any kind of discussion with the landlord that gets a little bit tense, if things aren't laid out properly, it can get, it can take a lot away from running your business. So it's important to work through those things and be very thorough about what you do there, and try to protect yourself whenever you can.
Yeah, that's good advice. Really good advice. How do you come up with your concepts? Where do you get your ideas from? Is it from travel? Is it from stuff you've always thought you wanted to do, or a mix of both? Or
I think it's a little mix of both, right? So, you take what you like and what you see works over the years, and things continue. I mean, stuff is always evolving. I think the core concepts are, great product, good people, and just a nice appeal, especially in the bar and restaurant business. People are always so mindful of your, the way your place looks. What's your decor? Do things make sense? And there's a lot of, there's just so many different facets to go into opening bars and restaurants. I think, you become a designer, and you become an operator, and you're kind of managing a construction schedule at the same time, and then you're raising money and you're doing all these things, and design's a big part of that, and so, the concept itself, I usually, you start to kind of think about what should go in there into a space, and then lots of travel, because you just kind of pick, for me, at least I go and I pick up an idea, and, I want to go sit in 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 different places that are similar to maybe the concept that I'm thinking about, and little nuances from each, kind of start sparking the imagination. And then there's a wealth of opportunity for photos and a little inspiration on the internet now, with when it comes down to decor and design. I mean, Pinterest is such a good one now. Like, everybody kind of fires through all that stuff, and there's some kind of trends and stuff that's now and cool and what folks like. But really, I like to go to some bigger markets. Denver's a good one to go to. I like Chicago. I like everyone, kind of flies into New York. And I guess the experience over life, over time, and traveling and picking little things up along the way and remembering that kind of plays into the concepts as well. And then, the concept itself, what's our product? What's our food? What's our beverage? What are we delivering, and where are we delivering it? If Raleigh's lacking for a sandwich shop downtown, a legitimate, homemade, delicious sandwich shop, that's kind of where Linus Peppers came from, because there just wasn't anything like that. Most everything was pretty cookie cutter, and there's some great places downtown for quick serve sandwiches and stuff like that, but a lot of cold sandwiches, and we kind of went a different direction and did some house cured meats and hot sandwiches and stuff like that. So, you kind of take a nod from what's around you as well. And then the inspiration for how everything kind of comes about comes, I think, from a lot of travel,
Good stuff, man. What about other restaurant owners? I know you mentioned before we started the interview that your buddies with Van Nolentz over at Amanda, which is a great restaurant, and Van's a great guy, and he's been on this podcast. And you all have you have a lot of really good restaurant owners doing some cool things in Raleigh. Do you spend a lot of time with your peers? I know you're real busy, but do you guys share ideas a lot, or talk about those kinds of relationships?
Sure. Well, what's interesting is the answer is yes overall. We do. And then a lot of the guys, we mentioned earlier when we were speaking before we got on the podcast here, we all kind of came up together. Guys, we were all working in bars and restaurants in Raleigh together. Guys from Trophy, they were working down the street at a group of other restaurants when I was working at a bar back in the early 2000s. Guys from Tobacco Road, like they're friends of mine. We've all kind of come from the same place. Van, Matt Kelly's a good buddy in Durham. And he's got a nice little group of restaurants over there, very, very awesome chef. And, it's certainly a collaborative environment, and we all share the same struggles. So when we kind of get together and kind of throw out some of these ideas of what we're struggling with, when you're in the moment as an entrepreneur, as even with a business partner, sometimes it kind of feels like God's picking on you in a way, and then kind of sit down with everybody and you're like, wow, you're dealing with the same personnel problems, you're dealing with the same contractor problems, you're dealing with the same, timeline problems, all these things. So just from that end of things, it's nice to sit down and kind of share the struggle and the solutions with groups of folks downtown. There's certainly a great group of people doing some phenomenal things in Raleigh, and a lot of that's happened, in the last 5, 6, 7 years. Ashley Christensen's has been doing big things, putting Raleigh on the map. Scott Crawford's a good buddy. We spend some time talking and eating and just kind of going over our history of places we've worked before and how that applies to what we do now. Echelon and experiences. G. Patel's a good buddy of mine. We've been friends forever. Other guys that have, kind of made their way into other restaurant groups also that haven't quite bridged and jumped into the ownership category yet, but guys that I grew up with, came up in the business with here in Raleigh, that are now managers or director of operations. We also share some, share some of our war stories and solutions thereof. So, I think that as of right now, Raleigh's got a really good collaborative environment. There's a few that kind of stick to themselves, but for the most part, we're all kind of passing each other on the street, and we're all we're hoping for the success in our community, because what we found is, if the city's doing well, then the more the merrier, bring it on. And it used to be this concern about saturation, or there are too many of this and too many of that. But man, I tell you, if we're doing things, if we're striving for a good product and a good community and what we're delivering to the community, I think the people are going to continue to come. And it's always the chicken or the egg kind of question when it comes to restaurants and bars. I don't think people would move downtown if there weren't restaurants and bars. And, and then we need those people downtown to support us. So typically we kind of go in first and then the people follow. So I think it is important that we collaborate and kind of work together, because, the other option is that really big money comes in from outside and kind of squashes us all, and so it's nice to be able to continue to work together on those things.
Yeah, man, it's good that y'all have that. It's a wonderful example for other communities and other restaurant owners that, may sometimes view each other as more as competition than as peers, but you kind of sound like you have a rising tide lifts all boats mentality, which is cool, and it's clearly working for you and your peers in Raleigh. I'm curious your thoughts about, what are some of the things that are going on right now that are affecting restaurants, or maybe more specifically independent restaurants, that maybe give you pause, things like rising labor costs or lack of talent, or what are some of the things, the challenges that you see? And I know is it the way you look at things is, hey, that's a challenge and I'm going to figure out a way to overcome it, but I know there's got to be challenges that you see sort of, on the horizon that you probably have to feel like you may have to address. What would some of those be?
Well, I tell you, that's a great question, because sometimes you look and you go, I'm really kind of tired of getting my butt kicked this week. I'd like things to be a little bit easier for a week or two, and certainly those challenges are there. And I mean, you pretty much hit all of them, I looked the other day and I just looked at the team. I was like, man, I'm really tired of getting my butt kicked. I'd really like to see some explosive growth and success really quickly. Let's go ahead and put that on our agenda and our to-do list, but you hit the high points on the head, I think. I mean, it's talent pool, when you're growing, again, we're all sharing the same talent pool. And when you're, I was there once, I was working for other guys and I saw great opportunities and sometimes wanted to go to the next new spot. So kind of taking the people that are already here in Raleigh and, I had a team that I always worked with. I always worked with when I'd go open a place for someone else before I owned my own places. And, this go around as we've grown, again, the talent pool has not been there. There's not enough people coming into Raleigh as a professional hospitality environment. A lot of the cities, that's kind of a path that people go to those cities to take. I've got a manager that came from Chicago, and he was working for a pretty big group up there. They've got 11 stores, and they're doing, $50 million a year. And Chicago's a big city, and it's a Midwestern city with a great work ethic. And he's like, man, we just had people walking in all the time that we could hire from. He said, it's really tough here in Raleigh to find people lately. And I hear the same struggle from my peers, that we're all kind of dealing with finding and keeping good talent. And that's one. And then, labor costs and food costs are, the big ones that we just try to keep an eye on. And I think rising food costs is certainly, it's tough to deal with because food is just expensive these days. And, it translates back obviously to what we have to charge for what we sell. And, luckily we're in an environment down in Raleigh where people will pay for quality products, but it would certainly be nice not to have to really, really, really always, take a gasp when we look at those food orders, because that's been a big one. I think food costs, and I hear that again from my peers too, that food's just expensive these days. And so I think the food costs, in running a restaurant, running a food-based program, the labor and the food is very expensive. But on top of that, just the fact that the food is continuing to rise, and do we have to, continue to raise our prices to keep up with that? Because the options are, do what you have to do or close the doors. And obviously we're in this to stay in business. And again, the talent pool is certainly, it's tough to find. I do a lot. I did a post for job postings. I did one in Nashville, one in Chicago, and one in New York when I was looking for folks. And of course did one here in Raleigh too, but had a lot of people calling in from other places that were looking to move to this area, and that's just what we've had to do, is kind of either create people or go find them.
Find ones that are coming in from other areas. I bet other people are doing that, but I have not heard nobody's told me about doing it. I think that's really smart. And so that's been successful. You were able to attract some folks from other cities.
Double-edged sword, right? Because Raleigh's a special place. North Carolina's a special place. It's a smaller market, and I've grown up in a smaller market. I tell people, I was like, back in 2006, 2007, I was bartending in downtown Raleigh. I could get cut from a shift at 12:30 on a Thursday, 12:30 a.m. And between 12:30 a.m. and 2 a.m., I could hit every single bar in downtown Raleigh and get a beer and a shot and a high five and a hug, And that was because there were only 6 or 7 or 8 places in Raleigh at the time. It could really kind of make a round pretty quickly. And so, from that has grown, the other day we were looking at some opportunity to sell some of our beer to, some of the folks we love and adore in downtown. We came up with 50 locations that we could potentially sell beer to within no more than 3/4 of a mile to a mile radius of where we were. And so what I guess what that says is, it's great that I can bring some people in from other markets, but they come from bigger markets typically, and coming to Raleigh, where it's still a small market, and it's a who knows who, and you got to know your reps, and you got to know the folks in town that go out and are movers and shakers and can help support your business. And if you don't have that network coming in, it's kind of it's hard to make that transition from a big market when folks are coming in and saying, man, I've got 1 million people right out my doorstep. And in our market, there's 1 million people all over Wake County. The entire county is 1 million, which is bigger than it was, but it's still not living in a densely populated area. So we've certainly had to bridge that struggle. And I've had to, being a guy who's been in Raleigh 17 years, strictly in downtown doing hospitality stuff here for a long time. It's hard to see that I have people in my camp that aren't as familiar with the city as I am. And that's been, that's certainly been the other end of that. I've brought some great talent in that has great fresh ideas and can handle the busy nights or the long hours or the long weeks that we've grown so accustomed to in this business. But on the other hand, they're also not rooted in Raleigh, and it takes a little time for them to get caught up.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Well, it's thing about talent's interesting to me. Like curious your thoughts on this, John, but I haven't vetted it. I haven't really looked into it fully, but just generally speaking, it seems that there are a lot of people that are graduating from college these days. Maybe they're in college, maybe they're graduating from college, and they may have some or a lot of student loan debt and few job opportunities in maybe their field of choice. I feel like the restaurant business, like it seems like it used to be something that people did for a short period of time between, maybe like before they got a quote real job or whatever. But like I look at a business like yours, I've got 3 kids. They're, my oldest is in 7th grade. They've got a ways to go, but I just feel like it would be really wise to steer somebody, unless they, have a field they know they're going to go into, but so many of us don't, right, getting out of school. And
right.
Your business is like you've got this growing business. So if I come work with John, I start maybe even it's just whatever as a bartender, but I start as a busboy. But I've got this. If I've got the wherewithal, and the head on my shoulders to hustle, to work hard, to exceed your expectations, to exceed my manager's expectations, to focus on my colleagues and my guests and not myself, and really get after it, then you have a business of meritocracy. I mean, almost all restaurants, it's meritocracy. So I'm going to position myself to, get a promotion or whatever. But I look down the road and I go, here's a guy who's got 6 concepts after 5 years. You're no doubt going to keep growing, and you're doing a lot of neat stuff. And so the business will grow, and I would think that there will be lots of growth opportunities within that business. And then, one day I've either, found a position that's very high in your organization, or I've learned so much that I go, man, I could go do this myself, which you probably, like you said, double-edged sword, but you probably applaud and cheer for those people because, if they go be successful, then that's a good reflection on you, and it's same rising tide lifts all boats. Sorry for the long diatribe, but I feel like it's such a great business if you're willing to go, whereas there's so many careers where it's like you have to, there's political parts of it, and corporate America can be challenging in so many ways, and downsizing, can affect people that have worked in place for a long time, where businesses like yours that are growing are such a really wonderful opportunity for somebody that has a little drive and hustle. I'm sure you would agree.
Yeah. So, that's great. I keep talking about that all day long because we could really have that conversation. I'll try not to, I'll try to get us out before 10 p.m. tonight with this response to that. But, I think it's real. I've just seen a couple of things. So, I opened my first bar, right? And it's me, I'm managing the project. I'm the manager. I've got a guy with me who's, a bar manager, which kind of helps get the day-to-day stuff, kind of keep it rolling, orders and inventory and all that stuff. And, and then that guy who I'm close with moves on to another opportunity with a bigger group, right? Just down the street. They've got, multi-million-dollar concepts, and there's 6 of them, and he moves on. And so, and then now, great example, because now I've created this little mini thing that we have going on here. I've got 6 concepts, 3 buildings. We're trying to grow into something, and I've certainly been spread a lot thinner than me just being the guy at the first one. I mean, living, breathing, and eating it. Like now I'm dealing with stupid stuff like insurance audits and, just all this crap that seems to eat up my day sometimes, and, not the fun stuff. And so as I start, and now this said person who was my bar manager and helped me open the first one, as he maybe circles around and goes, wow, you've built this empire. And then, and it looks, and then I've done job postings for, folks, at one point last year, I thought that I needed, I was looking for this ideal candidate that was like this director of operations for my building down on Salisbury Street. And which is where I've got 3 in that building. And so I've got 3 concepts and a catering arm of that. So in that building, just by itself, there's a small restaurant group. So I can have a catering salesperson. I could have a manager, a general manager, that's really more like a director of operations there that could eventually grow into a director of operations for the whole group. In that building too, I put a chef in there, and I want that chef to solve problems really quickly so they can grow into, you know, a chef for the group and have a guy under them at every location that we do. And really kind of what you're alluding to is, yeah, man, it takes a driven person, and it would be great to have that person. I'm getting a lot of luck with my 23 and 24 and 25 and 26 year olds. You know, I mean, they are just hungry and with new ideas. And, you know, people talk a lot about the millennial work ethic, but I'm finding that, like, the millennial that I'm struggling a little bit with are the early 30s, where they don't really know if this is maybe what they really want to be doing. I mean, it's a job and they've done it and they're pretty good at it, but I'm getting some folks coming in that are that are hungry and young and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed about the industry, and they're really exciting because they're spongy and they're willing and they're excited about, you know, creating opportunities for themselves. And so, you know, as we continue to grow, it's interesting to see that. And when I did recruit, you know, I was looking for a manager or someone. I was talking to guys that were coming out of big corporate. You know, they were overseeing 8 stores for a corporate group, and they're like, man, I'd really like to come work for you, where I could have an impact on a smaller group and something that's growing. And so these guys were in, you know, $115,000 a year jobs with benefits and 401k, and they were looking for something. You know, they just kind of hit their wall and hit their ceiling with that. So it's interesting to see, how do you attract talent by continuing to create opportunities, and that's certainly something that I'm just trying to figure out, and I don't know what the answer to that is, but I can certainly say that as we have, you know, had more things under the belt, it does look a lot more exciting for folks to kind of look at that and say, maybe this is a career path I want to be in, you know?
Yeah, man, I hear you. Well, I think it really is. I mean, it really just strikes me as something that it may not be the obvious thing to a lot of people, but man, gosh, you guys have so much opportunity in your business to, you know, just work hard, benefit from that, have opportunities to grow within a business. And it seems like independent restaurants, particularly in markets like Raleigh, I mean, there's a lot of other ones that that's your market, but there's just a lot of them where I feel like people they're tired of this cookie cutter, big chain approach a lot of times, and they're looking for something that's a little bit more local, a little bit more authentic. And I mean, customers at this point, but I just feel like there's a good opportunity for the business segment as a whole to continue to prosper. I mean, you can read news saying independent restaurants, global, whatever, but ones that are doing a good job, and they're opening all the time, people are, I mean, I know I am. I know my family is, and my friends, their families are, and, you know, we all have kids, and we're looking for somebody that's going to give us good service and good food, and, you know, we like putting money back into our local economy. It's a kind of a win-win when that happens, but it seems like there's just a lot of opportunities for independent restaurant business or segment as a whole to continue to thrive. I know there's a lot of challenges too, but.
Well, I can tell you, you know, what's crazy, interestingly enough, again, being transparent about the struggle and pushing forward is, you know, how do you keep the soul of what makes you special when, you know, how excited was I when I opened my very own first place? How excited was I to try and take care of my employees as best I can, to try and provide a pretty decently run and accountable work environment, you know, for them. And then as you start to grow, how do you put systems in place and, you know, run a good business without losing that touch, you know? And that's, you know, that's certainly, I think, you know, you look at a big corporate group, and I've worked for them. You know, I worked for P.F. Chang's back in the day. I worked for Sullivan's. P.F. Chang's, I think, is a really awesome company. You know, that group as a whole, you know, and the way they run things, and district managers there that were my managers before, I always call them for advice and those sort of things. But, you know, a lot of folks are aversive to that kind of corporate structure because of, you know, the rules and there's not a lot of freedom, and there's a certain way of doing things, and you don't have an impact on the menu or the recipes or the drinks, and they're always going to be there, and they come, you know, from a corporate office. But man, I tell you that, you know, those groups have been very successful. Those big groups have, and, you know, as we're now looking at trying to manage a little portfolio of so many different, I call them, you know, it's like having 6 kids, you know, how do you keep up with them all sometimes? And, you know, if folks are gravitated towards, you know, sort of that mix, because there are groups in and around us that have 6 or 7 in the portfolio there, and they're highly corporately organized, and a lot of folks are aversive to that, you know. And we love the corporate structure, but we still want to kind of foster that team family environment. I mean, we're still small enough that, I'm going to be the guy that's helping you clean up that back storage room still if we need to. I'm not too good for that, but how do you continue to grow and still have an impact on your business without losing that charm? And I think that's something certainly that we've kind of had to take a step back and look at, because we like a certain kind of employee, and if we want that certain kind of employee to be part of our family, we really kind of have to foster that kind of environment.
Love it, man. Love it. Yeah, it's a challenge. It really is. I mean, I can relate a little bit just with we started with one restaurant as a customer, and we're pushing 6,500 now. And
Wow.
when you first start, everything's just such, you just want to like go visit each customer or whatever.
Wow.
But it's but if you can keep that though, it's really neat because like we say we try to always treat schedule file like it's like what would we do if we were just getting started? Like how would we handle this situation or whatever? And there's some things you have to kind of let go of a little bit, but in order to for scale and so forth. But then again, like if you always have that sort of hungry little guy mentality, I think it keeps you grounded and humble and focused on the things that that really matter, and which is taking great care of your customers and making the process of doing business with you easy and providing a really great experience. But I like the way you think about it, man. I do. Listen, I think one more question I would ask. I'd love to talk to you for another hour, but I've taken a lot of your time, but I do always like to close with this question, which is, if somebody comes to you and they've got that hunger and they say, look, man, I love what you're doing. Maybe it's an employee, maybe it's somebody just, from the community that you don't even know that, wants to start their own business one day, wants to start their own restaurant, that is. What, I know you could sit and spend days with somebody giving them advice and coaching them, but generally speaking, what are some of the things that you've seen where maybe people have tried it and it hasn't worked out or whatever? Like what's some generally good advice you would give to somebody? Like, hey, I know you want to do this. It's a great business. I love it for these reasons. However, these are things you got to really think about before you dive in, because it's, there are some big challenges, and it is a lifestyle business, and you really have to be ready for it. What do you tell people, John?
Well, I think the first thing is never give up, that saying, because things get tough. And, my girlfriend was really instrumental. She comes from her father was an eighth grade dropout entrepreneur who went to work for Rick Hendrick immediately when he dropped out of school, and, became very successful in NASCAR. And she was a little bit younger than I when I first started. And it was just like, I just remember, this rings out. It's like, if it was easy, everybody would do it, and that stuck with me this whole time. It really was kind of an instrumental saying when I was sitting there, like beating my head against the wall. So first of all, that persistence is crucial in any business and any entrepreneurial struggle and jumping in the deep end. As you well know, there's the good times and the bad times. And certainly there's a persistence thing of just kind of, I think we're sadists for pain. We jump into this thing and we figure out how to make it work. But I think in this business, what I would tell people is, I see folks to be very successful that come out of experience in the business. Like there's nothing that you can't figure out, but at the same time, like if you've got that experience, 5-10 years in a, not just working in a restaurant or a bar, not just a bartender or a waiter. And one time I worked in a restaurant in college or whatever, but, really having spent some time in a managerial role or an impactful role in a restaurant or bar or nightclub or, hospitality-based kind of thing, hotel or whatever it may be, because I think that experience is there's no price tag you can put on that. It's priceless. And I think you can learn a lot of things in a hospitality degree, but that hands-on application of stuff and then treating a business as if it was your own when you're working in someone else's business will certainly translate into the way that you would run your own business. Again, like you said too, where do you find the days off? I just realized last week that I think we pushed all our manager meetings back to a Monday because we were doing them all on Wednesday for years. And I don't really think I've had a scheduled day off in like 2 years, and I got to remember to kind of work that into my schedule. And so, there's a lot of demand that comes with this business. It doesn't shut off at 5 o'clock, and depending on how late you're open, you might need to be on call a lot. Something goes down, air conditioner goes down or POS system goes down, or, there's certainly options for folks that can come fix that for your managers, but you need to be accountable to them too. And, I think you got to have a passion for it. I think what we were talking about earlier is folks that may want to come work in this industry. It is super glamorous on the outside, right? Like it's a place where people go for their expendable income and their enjoyment. It's not eating out and going out for drinks is not a necessity in life. So, it's glamorous on the outside, and it should be. And then on the inside, I mean, it's a hard job. There's a lot of hard work and long hours that go along with it, and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Just by being, part of the operations there. And I think if that's something that folks are into, I think I talked to a friend once, and he was talking about being an investor or a partner in a restaurant with me, and he's like, well, we do a lot of eating out. We see a lot of places around the country because they travel for their corporate job, and for excuse me, for me that was one of those. It was like, well, that's great until you get into the nitty gritty of the thing, and I'm in and out of my places almost every day. I'm trying to kind of take a step back a little bit so I can focus a little bit more on the big picture and the marketing and all that stuff. But, there's a lot of long hours and a lot of hard work that goes into, especially the restaurant and bar business. And, it's typically a weekend business. Some folks get lucky and do like I don't know, there's a couple, I think the Rise Biscuit guys, they nailed it. They're open. I think they do business until 2 p.m. every day or something like that. And then they shut it down, and they're franchising all over the country. But a lot of times, it's late nights, it's weekends, it's, you kind of get back and you work Friday, Saturday, you hit the ground running on Monday because there's orders to be placed and, deliveries to receive and all that stuff. And so you gotta really kind of say, okay, am I willing to take a Tuesday and Wednesday off or just a Wednesday, or, what am I willing to do to be a part of the industry? And if I'm going to be an entrepreneur and do it on my own, am I willing to never give up when the times get tough, And I think that would be my advice.
Gotcha, man. I love it. It's fantastic advice. Dude, listen, John, I appreciate it, man. I'm going to let you get back to it. But thank you very much for the time. And as you said, man, the transparency and just sharing and everything. It's just awesome. And this is the kind of stuff that we hope will help a lot of other people learn and give them inspiration and just, hopefully be able to do some of the same things that you've done very well. So really appreciate the time. I know everybody listening does as well. So thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you so much, Will. I really, really appreciate it. I just admire, I was blown away just now when you said you guys have 5,500 restaurants at this point. That's amazing. And it's just, you guys have a great team there, always so responsive. And that's kind of why I reached out in the first place. And I hope you guys continue to do the good work that you do. And we're certainly loyal followers, and we'll continue to keep a relationship with you guys. And, I'm happy to give out my email address, john@thelocalicon.com. If anybody ever hears this or needs any advice, shoot me an email. This is the kind of stuff that, man, I tell you, it just talking about it kind of reinvigorates me to just kind of keep pushing forward, because I kind of forget sometimes, what it's all about when you kind of get caught up in the day-to-day. And this is, working through those problems and having solutions and really, really, really just, presenting something special to folks that walk in your doors, what it's all about. So thanks again for the time.
Man, absolutely, John. Thank you. Have a good one. We'll talk again soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks.
All right. Take care. See you.
Bye-bye.